For over 6 decades, the Fantastic Four have survived bankruptcy, cancellation, several bad movies, and whatever the hell this was.
Doom, it's clobbering time.
And 64 years later, here they stand as one of the most anticipated movies of 2025. How did we get here? Today, you and I are taking a look at the Fantastic Four's journey from page to screen and beyond. Hello and welcome to the channel. I am Terrell, you can call me T, and welcome to a new series that I'm starting that I'm gonna call From Page to Screen and Beyond. That name is subject to change depending on if you guys like it or not. Basically, this will be a sort of docu-series on popular franchises, looking back at their original inception and all of their major moments in pop culture history up until this present day. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Today, we're looking at Marvel's first family, the Fantastic Four. Our story begins in America, 1961, with a couple of young and hungry Marvel Comics employees, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Now, a much younger Stan the Man was down on his luck and close to quitting the comic book game altogether. He was just not earning enough money and was ready to become just a regular writer.
I really wanted to quit and try something else. And I remember Joan said to me, you know, Stan, if you want to quit, before you do, why don't you do one book the way you would like to do it?
Apparently, a rival comic publisher just put out a team that was taking the world by storm, and Marvel Comics were threatened. Now, that team, you might have heard of them. They're a lesser known group called
the Super Seven.
Please don't cross that.
It's called the Justice League.
Yes, the company that would later be known as DC Comics were thriving with the launch of their newly established JLA, uniting their biggest heroes into one team. Business was booming and Marvel needed to catch up.
Shouldn't we have a league of our own?
And while you would think this would be the natural inception of the Avengers, right?
Wrong.
No, they actually wouldn't be created for another couple years. Stan's idea was a little more fantastic.
Say that again?
Stan Lee got to work on Marvel's answer to the Justice League, but he wanted his version to be different. He wanted to make his team more relatable, unmasked, public-facing heroes that people could identify with, humanized characters.
I didn't give them costumes, and I tried to make them real characters living in the real world. The hero wasn't just a perfect guy, he was a fellow like me.
Which would kind of be the bedrock for a lot of the characters that he made after. Larger than life, but with hearts of gold. And so began the Fantastic Four, co-created alongside artist Jack Kirby. Now, there is some debate as to who came up with most of the ideas for the Fantastic Four first, Jack or Stan. They back and forth on this, and there's still no definitive answer, but it was truly a collaborative effort. A group of astronauts who take an experimental ship to space without clearance and get hit with cosmic rays, sending them crashing to Earth and giving them these bizarre powers. Reed Richards, head scientist, can now stretch his body like rubber. His partner Sue Storm can turn invisible and make force fields. Her little brother who tagged along, Johnny Storm, can now turn his body on fire and fly. And their close friend Ben Grimm was permanently changed into this big rock thing. While they were initially shocked, all of them decided to collectively use their powers to do good in the world. Their first issue in 1961 covers this origin and sees them go up against their first villain, the Mole Man, a guy that leads underground monsters and wants to take over the world. And listen, from the jump, the Fantastic Four were a hit for Marvel fans.
The Marvel Comics Group is the acknowledged leader in monthly sales of all comic magazines. Their sales have tripled in the past 3 years. Quite a publishing phenomenon.
People of the 60s loved them. The books were selling real fast, especially in the USA. Human Torch, Mr. Fantastic, The Invisible Girl, later changed to The Invisible Woman, and The Thing were sensations. Avant-garde, funny, a real family that just wanted to help the world. And in my opinion, Stan was right. It is easy to see why people were attached to the Fantastic Four so much. They were a family. That was their core value. Looking back, their popularity could also be attributed to being a team of space travelers during the literal space race of the 1960s. For those who don't know, in the US, there was a literal race against the Soviet Union as to who was going to get people into space first. In the comic itself, it's President Kennedy that tasked Mr. Fantastic to go into space in the first place. So proud American space heroes were a big patriotic hit for the public. US 1, Soviet 0. Fantastic Four in the 60s would also be a huge platform for debuting some of Marvel's other biggest names. Their comics debuted Black Panther and Wakanda. They introduced the Kree, the Skrulls, the Inhumans. Issue 4 of the Fantastic Four brings back like a character from the 40s, Namor the Submariner. And it was as early as issue 5 that introduced their most famous villain, Doctor Doom.
This is gonna be fun.
Initially depicted as a former classmate of Reed's that tried communicating with death, he sent his team on a time heist to find Blackbeard's treasure for him. And it wasn't until later on that he get a much deeper backstory, like being the king of Latveria, being a sorcerer, being a tech genius. Yeah, for those who don't know, Doctor Doom is basically the combination of like Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and Reed Richards just in one person. Doom's look was visually inspired by the Man in the Iron Mask and the Grim Reaper. Essentially, Jack Kirby wanted a scary-ass villain and the human embodiment of death itself.
You are trespassing on Latverian soil. Leave. Now.
Now, they had many adventures, but perhaps their biggest development in the 60s happened at the end of that decade with the introduction of their newborn son, Franklin Richards.
It's baby.
A huge moment in the comics. Anime fans think of him like Son Gohan, a baby born with immeasurable power from the jump, partly due to his relation to his cosmically irradiated parents and also the very unique circumstances of his birth. For a time, Franklin was thought to be an Omega level mutant and was guided and trained by Agatha Harkness. I cannot stress enough how important this kid is to the wider Marvel universe for that entire 60 years that they've been alive. The boy is a walking nuke.
The baby was exploding! You ever seen an exploding baby before, Mr. Dicker?
And just before we leave this decade, I cannot talk comics without talking about maybe their most iconic run in all of comic book history, the Galactus trilogy.
I will destroy their planet.
It's been called the indisputable pinnacle of the Silver Age and Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's magnum opus. The story shows Silver Surfer warning the team of Galactus, a huge, unstoppable cosmic monster who's on his way to eat the planet. That story also introduces the Watcher, the overseer of that universe, later will be known to be the overseer of the entire multiverse. Yeah, there's a reason this story's been adapted so many times on screen. It was a huge cultural moment for comic books everywhere.
Galactus, the devourer of worlds.
Now, jumping ahead in time, let's come out of comics for a bit and look into the world of cartoons. Because it wasn't long before the Fantastic Four made their debut on the small screen with Hanna-Barbera's The Fantastic Four in 1967. Then in 1978, you had another animated series that was also short-lived, but it did introduce Herbie, their robotic assistant. Actually, in the show, he was the fourth member of the Fantastic Four, made to be a replacement for Johnny for some reason.
The greatest team of superheroes the world has ever known. The new Fantastic Four.
And no, he has no relation to the one in the Lindsay Lohan movie. That's a banger of a film though. As time went on throughout the 70s, Marvel would go from strength to strength. The Fantastic Four, more than most, were devouring comic sales faster than Galactus would devour planets.
Hello, I like money.
Heading into the 80s, we got Marvel's biggest crossover at the time, 1984's Secret Wars, where the Avengers, Spider-Man, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four were placed onto a planet with all of their villains, essentially for a battle royale. And no, that's literally it. I would love to tell you there's more plot than that, but it is literally a guy just decides he wants to take the biggest heroes and villains and watch them fight.
The Beyonder.
Now, as iconic as this story was, behind the scenes, effectively the story was just a way to sell more toys for Marvel. They had a deal going with Hasbro at the time, and they were debuting a lot of new costumes and new playsets and such, and this was a great way to show them off. Because even 4 years ago, everything comes back to money.
Hello, I like money.
Marvel randomly changing their characters' costumes every once in a while to sell more toys. They would never do that now, right? Which takes us to the 90s, the decade I was born, and sadly the beginning of Marvel's downfall. Because while the Fantastic Four was still an iconic title, so was Spider-Man and the X-Men, Marvel as a company was still struggling financially. And I mean struggling. They were looking at bankruptcy in the face. So in a Hail Mary attempt, Marvel decided to turn to a higher power, the film industry. That joke was in poor taste. The film industry is hell. They sold their film rights to their most popular IP, and let me make sure I get this right. Spider-Man went to Sony, Hulk went to Universal, the X-Men went to Fox, and the Fantastic Four went to a company called Constantine Films.
Who?
They're a lesser known German production company who made some pretty good films at the time. But yeah, all of those companies managed to buy those characters for a steal.
Damn good deal.
And thinking their rights were in good hands, Marvel found their first fumble in the film industry in 1994, when Constantine Films decided to create a feature-length debut for the Fantastic Four.
The Fantastic Four.
Yes, 1994 was the Fantastic Four's first ever foray into the world of film. If you've never heard of it, I don't blame you. This film was actually never released in in cinemas. Constantine Films bought the rights to the characters for the sake of it. It was probably a very low number they had to buy it for, and they knew the power of IP management. Something that is still prevalent to this day. As long as you're a studio that owns a big franchise, you're financially doing very good. But now they were contractually obligated to make a movie, and they didn't really want to spend any budget on it. So they made this low budget pile of crap so that they could retain the rights to the characters. And I don't want to be that guy that's mean, but this just is, it's not very good. Doing a superhero movie on a low budget is very hard, especially in 1994. You have access to some good technology, but there's a reason the superhero boom didn't launch until the end of the 90s/early 2000s, because access to CGI was just much more prevalent. Thankfully though, the team were still in the pop culture zeitgeist thanks to a form that would never fail us: cartoons. Marvel might have been struggling in the 90s, but in their animated department, they were killing it. This was the era where they had several Marvel animated shows all kind of loosely connected running at the same time. You had the Fantastic Four series, as well as Hulk, Spider-Man, Silver Surfer, Iron Man, and the X-Men. And the Fantastic Four would cross over in several of their shows.
Of course! Computer, can I transport to this planet the Fantastic Four?
Affirmative.
And to close out the 90s, there was one big event that happened with the Fantastic Four, and that was thanks to Franklin Richards. After the majority of Marvel heroes sacrificed themselves to defeat the X-Men villain Onslaught, they were all presumed dead until Franklin displays one of his strongest feats. He happens to have cosmic universal bending abilities, able to create a pocket universe to save all of his friends in. Yes, the boy can create universes in the palm of his hand. Walking nuke. And then boom, Y2K, 21st century time, baby. This is also my era. I was actually born in the late 90s and grew up throughout the 2000s. I'm what you'd call a zillennial. I'm kind of part Gen Z, part millennial. It's a disgusting term, I hate it, but here we are. Meaning, for as much as I love the X-Men animated series of the 90s, I also very much love X-Men Evolution. This is also when I first started getting into comics like Iron Man, Captain America, Spider-Man, and yes, Fantastic Four. They were doing pretty good in the 2000s. They had great runs from Mark Waid, J. Michael Straczynski, Dwayne McDuffie. They appeared in crossover events like Civil War and my personal favorite, Secret Invasion. The comic, not the show. The show is garbage.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
The Incredibles movie in 2004 was very much based on the Fantastic Four, a family of superheroes in the 60s, one that can stretch her body, one that can turn invisible, and one that is a child walking nuke as well.
I think that these new superheroes, like the Incredibles, are just great. I mean, I haven't seen the movie yet. I can't wait to see it. But from what I've seen in the trailers and heard, it looks terrific. And frankly, I'm very flattered, and I think all of Marvel should be, because I think so much that's in The Incredibles was inspired by the Fantastic Four.
But maybe the most important development of the decade for the Fantastic Four, Constantine Films got it together and handed over the production of Fantastic Four movies to Fox, creating 2005's Fantastic Four. And you know what? Banger. Do you know how shocked I was to find that people don't like this movie or didn't like it when it came out? You know what? You want a child watching this movie, okay? Because I guarantee the children who watched this movie in the cinemas when it came out have a special connection to it. Roast me in the comments if you want.
Your booze mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer.
Directed by Tim Story, it starred Ian Grufford, Jessica Alba, Chris Evans, and Michael Chiklis, and was basically a simplified version of the Fantastic Four's origin. Four heroes team up to fight a bitter ex-colleague. It was funny, cool action sequences, some good casting choices, and CGI that I personally enjoyed. This is a man on fire. You don't realize how good this looks compared to the 90s and prior. Fine, it was not the most directly accurate take on the story. But you know what? For a family movie where a lot of kids like myself are gonna watch it, you can hold your comic accuracy and take a nice family-friendly and simplified origin. That part at the end where their fight was based purely on science, I didn't even understand any of it. I wasn't even good at science in school, but you know what? I felt like a genius watching this film. The tomatoes may be rotten, but it made triple its money back at the box office. So you know what? Maybe I am just smarter than you. How about that? And amidst this hype was also the era of movie tie-in games, video games based directly on the movies. And Fantastic Four was cold.
Fantastic Four, the game.
The co-op mode in this game, you kids don't even know what couch co-op is anymore. It was top tier video gaming. And swinging back over to animation, they were still killing it there too. Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes is one of the best Marvel animated shows ever. I've been rewatching it recently, it's so good. And if you're wondering why I'm bringing it up, it's because it did cross over the Fantastic Four a few times in fights against people like Kang, Doctor Doom, and Galactus. And their own Fantastic Four series was also a banger in this decade. World's Greatest Heroes? Come on now. It had the anime inspired designs, some pretty cool villains from the comics came in, and that theme song was heavy. Now, while everything was going well for the Fantastic Four, things got a little bit rocky, no pun intended, in 2007, with the release of the sequel movie, Rise of the Silver Surfer. This one's harder to defend. But you know what? No, I'm already neck deep in it. I actually liked this one as a child, okay? I can recognize it wasn't the best movie, but I did not dislike it as a kid, and that's all that counts. An adaptation of that famous game-changing Galactus trilogy that just didn't really fit into the more simplistic, grounded, light version of the Fantastic Four that we've come to know. Yes, critics did hate it, and apparently a lot of you fans did too, but you know what? Not me. Personally, I was already bonded with these characters. I still think the casting was pretty good for all of them. I don't think you realize it. All you need to entertain kids in the 2000s was to make their favorite characters do some sort of fusion, okay? Megazord, Gogeta, anything like that, we're in.
To quote a friend of mine, it's clobbering time.
And hey, it was still a box office success. And you know what they say, money buys happiness and is the root of all joy. Is that not the expression? In fact, before we move on, I'm gonna clarify. You know how as a kid, everyone has that handful of DVDs that their parents bought that because they were the only few that you had, you watched them on loop? That was the Fantastic Four movies for me. Repeated playing of both of those movies. Also Freaky Friday and Rush Hour. The 2000s were great. Now on to maybe the most uncertain time for the Fantastic Four since the 90s, the 2010s. Now the back end of the 2000s of course kicked off the MCU with Iron Man, which itself was the launch of Marvel's biggest money-making machine, Marvel Studios. So at this point in the 2010s, the Marvel brand is back on the map and they wanted their toys back. Yeah, remember how they sold all their film rights to all those different production companies? Marvel was on the warpath to get them back. But of course at this point, Sony, Fox and the others clung onto their heroes for dear life. And you know what, for Fox that was a strong move financially. The X-Men movies were still very popular. However, they made their biggest mistake in 2015 when it came to the Fantastic Four and that terrible movie that we know as Fant4stic. And you know what? Initially, this film had legs. I don't know if you guys were there around 2013 to 14, but the idea of this film was actually pretty exciting for a lot of fans. Josh Trank, the guy who made Chronicle, was going for this like indie, coming-of-age, gritty Fantastic Four story. A total reimagining of the team, where they were like these kid military ops of powers. And then he wanted to blend that into a more darker story, a more horror-esque story. That part I don't know if I would have liked as a reboot, but it was the era of making every project like super dark, so. But either way, we kind of got neither of those things in the film, thanks to a very annoying thing called studio interference. Multiple inconsistent scripts being meshed together, a bunch of reshoots, and putting legitimately good actors in a disaster of a production. Not to mention, before he left, allegedly Josh Trank wasn't the best person to work with. Although he was somewhat justifiably angry because he wanted to cast a black woman to play Sue Storm alongside Michael B. Jordan, but the studio said, well, no, one of them needs to be white, so they got Kate Mara.
I was mostly interested in a black Sue Storm and a black Johnny Storm. But when it came down to it, I found a lot of pretty heavy pushback on casting a black woman.
There's still a lot of mystery and he said, she said around the production of this movie, but I'm gonna move on. But at this point, of course, Grandpa Marvel are now pissed. They're seeing their OG team of heroes before Spider-Man, before X-Men, before the Avengers, the Fantastic Four being dragged through the mud in cinema. Multiple bad films being done. Fortunately for Marvel though, they were simultaneously thriving because around the same time, Disney had just bought Marvel, so now they got money. In another attempt to get their toys back, they made a deal with Sony to try and get Spider-Man to join the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but Fox still would not budge. So plan B, and this is where it gets juicy. If Marvel couldn't make movies out of their own heroes, then the next solution was to just throw them away.
Well, burn it all down and start over.
All of a sudden announcing that low reader interest has led to the pausing of Fantastic Four comic books indefinitely in 2015. Oh yes, the Fantastic Four would officially end their run with the 2015 Secret Wars story arc, which was legitimately pretty good. But spoiler alert for that comic, it ends with the entire Marvel universe collapsing and meshing together into this brand new one where the Fantastic Four are no longer there. Instead, they exist outside the multiverse, creating universes with Franklin. They are now a family of gods creating the stories, not having stories of their own. And if you think this was exclusive to just the X-Men, you would be wrong. Marvel was simultaneously getting rid of them too, just a little quieter. Subtly replacing them with the Inhumans, and essentially sullying the popularity of any comic book character owned by Fox. Fox. Essentially, the idea was spoiling the team so that Fox would no longer want them, effectively erasing the Fantastic Four from the pop culture zeitgeist. I will say this is technically like speculation, but pretty much everyone agrees this is what Marvel were doing for that like 10-year period. But then the war ended in 2019, where instead of making a deal with Fox, they just gobbled them up. Marvel had won the war. Bringing us to 2019 and into the 2020s, effectively present day, and Marvel, at 2019 at least, were at their peak. They concluded their Infinity Saga in the MCU, and with Disney acquiring Fox, the Fantastic Four officially are back in the hands of Marvel Studios. And boy, did Kevin Feige waste no time. Becoming the new de facto head of the company, he had big plans for the MCU post-Avengers Endgame, announcing at Comic-Con that the Fantastic Four will officially be joining the MCU.
I didn't even have time to talk about the Fantastic Four.
Which naturally led fans to speculate who was going to be cast in the upcoming movie. That's when a viral image of John Krasinski as Reed Richards got people running wild. Marvel saw that image and decided at least to show fans that they do care about their interests, introducing an alternate Reed Richards in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, Krasinski of course immediately got killed by Wanda, showing fans that, A, Wanda is not one to be messed with, and B, that Krasinski was not going to be the de facto Mr. Fantastic going forward. I should also address the massive speculation that he was going to appear in WandaVision thanks to that famous line, the aerospace engineer. TikTokers basically took that in 2021 and ran with it, saying that he'd for sure appear in that show. Okay, yeah, that was me. I was one of those people. I am sorry, I was wrong. Now, around this time, it was revealed that Ant-Man director Peyton Reed had pitched an idea for the Fantastic Four movie to be set in the 1960s. But ultimately, that just fell into the rumor mill, and Peyton Reed moved on to do Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. But evidently, that 60s idea did stick. Spider-Man director John Watts' name was attached to the film, but then he backed out. And at D23 2022, the place where I met my beautiful fiance, Kevin Feige announced that WandaVision showrunner Matt Shakman would take the helm. Production officially began on January 2024, and then a month after that, on February 4th, F4, we got the title, concept art, and the cast all in one. Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, Joseph Quinn as the Human Torch, and Evan Moss Backrack as the Thing, all starring in Fantastic Four: First Steps. Soon after, Julia Garner was announced as the Silver Surfer. She's playing an alternate universe version of him, that's why she's female instead of male. And Paul Innocent plays the film's main threat, Galactus. Trailers revealed the film's vibe that fans love, a 60s inspired alternate universe where Sue is pregnant and the team need to save the world from Galactus. And at the time of filming this video, this movie is so close, I can taste it. And the latest and likely final tease before the movie comes out would be the Thunderbolts. The post-credit scene of the film shows the Fantastic Four barreling into the MCU. Barreling? Did I say barreling? Barreling into the MCU. My theory is that they are going to manage to beat Galactus, or at least make a deal with him to go away, and then the movie will end with a plot twist where the Earth is still destroyed by an incursion. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the tea.
It's over. Go home.
A full and in-depth retrospective on the iconic super team, Marvel's Fantastic Four. Did you enjoy this video? Did you learn something new about the Fantastic Four? Do you agree with me that 2005's Fantastic Four movie is severely underrated? Please do let me know in the comment section and tell me what other heroes or franchises in general that you want me to cover just like this. And for sure, you need to subscribe because the next episode of this series is going to be on the other boy in blue, Superman. Much love, and that's the tea.